Hi friends, thanks for joining me. Today's design is going to be a celestial design and I'll be using masking fluid. So I'm not sure if you can see in the video, but I've actually lightly drawn my sunburst and my stars very lightly with pencil on here, and then I'll be going over that with masking fluid. Letting that dry for a while, and once it's good and dry, then I will be doing some layers of paint, and it's just a really cool design, as you could see in the thumbnail picture. So before we get started, I would like to ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. It does help my channel grow, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So for the materials list for this first portion is basically just my watercolor paper, and I have a couple of brushes, my masking fluid, and then I also have a little dish with some dish soap in it, and I coat my brushes before I start using them with masking fluid. That way, when I'm done, the masking fluid does come off the brush. I don't use my very best brushes just in case there is a little bit of damage, but the dish soap really helps a lot. And then I had my pencil and my eraser. So real quick, I do want to show you, let me grab a marker here. To draw the sunburst, here, let me just set that aside. And I actually used a little cup to get a nice round circle, but it's basically, I do the round circle, and then on the four, and this is just pretty rough, it's not all that great, but I just kind of want to give you an idea, so because I didn't do the drawing on camera. And then, so I do the four, you know, the four sides or four areas, and then I go back in between each one and put a little burst, and then in between those I go in and do one just to make it a nice full sunburst. And so that gives you an idea basically of how I drew it. And one more. Okay, and then I just went around and filled it in with stars. So that's the basic on it. Like I said, I'm not doing that part of it on camera on here, but I did use a nice round glass actually. So let me make sure I get that nicely centered. Okay, so to start off, and this is just a masking fluid that I purchased at one of the craft stores a long time ago. So as I mentioned, I want to just kind of coat my brush with that dish soap. Now I'll set that off to the side. And this is blue, so that's nice that I'll be able to see where I put it down. I've had some in the past that really don't turn color until they start to dry. And it's kind of hard to work with them. So everywhere that I do put the masking fluid will be, that'll stay white. And I'm doing this very lightly. And it does have a tendency to dry out and gum up on your brush a little bit as you go. So I may be cleaning this off a little bit from time to time. Okay, so I have that done, and then I just go around, and all of these, everywhere where I drew something, basically I'm just going over it with the masking fluid. If you've never used masking fluid before, this would be a great project to give it a try. It's really a lot of fun, and you come up with some cool, you know, some cool effects with it. And then, as I mentioned, I will be letting this dry very well. And then once it's dry, you know, we'll be adding layers of paint. And then to get this off, you basically just use an eraser and kind of rub it off. Okay, so I actually paused my video for a couple minutes while I completed that. I didn't want to bore you with going around the circle of the Starburst painting the masking fluid on. And now I have begun painting on the stars. Now originally I just went through and drew a star, so there are the lines, you know, in between there with the pencil. And on most of these, what I'm doing is going around just the outside of the star, not on the lines that are on the inside. And those will be erased out when I'm erasing the masking fluid off. So I'm not too worried about that. That's why it's very important to do everything in pencil so that you can erase it off in the end. And then if you want to put in, you know, a few stars, and in fact, I'll tell you what, let's do this. I'm gonna, on this one, I'm gonna mask off the entire thing. So what will happen is when I go to paint the color on, this star is going to stay white all the way through, whereas these will just be a white outline on them. And if that sounds a little confusing to you, you'll see when we get to the near end of this and everything starts to fall together nicely. And so for this, I am using an 03 or a number 3 brush. And I did have a larger one. However, I don't believe I'm going to be needing that. That would just be a little too big for the look that I want here. Okay, and then on this one I'll do the outside. And you don't have to be real picky about making sure that the thickness of this masking fluid is the same on all of your stars. You know, it's actually kind of a nice look when there is a contrast or, you know, different thicknesses of the white area. And also while you're doing this, because it does take this so long to dry, make sure that you're working from the inside out so that you're not reaching over yourself and accidentally, you know, smearing the masking fluid. Just a little tip that I've learned from my mistakes. So I want to pass those on and make your painting experience a little bit easier for you. And that's why I'm kind of turning this around like this. And I think I'm going to put just another solid one here. There we go. We'll do a solid one here. And then up here, we're going to do an outline. And then once I get all these done, I'm going to go back and put little dots in throughout this background because I love my dots. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you know between dots and lines and dashes, they're kind of my go-to filler. And I think they just add a little bit of character to a lot of designs. At least a lot of my whimsical or abstract designs, they just add a lot to it. All right, so I think I want to add a solid one up here. Now I do have a face on the Starburst. However, I'm not going to do that in white. I'm going to do that with paints after I get everything else done, and you'll see how that all falls into place. Okay, so now it's time for the dots. We can just add little clusters here and there. We can add a single dot from time to time. I don't know if there's ever too many dots. I don't know if that's possible. I don't think it is, to be honest with you. And see, now as I put these on, you can see that they're pretty thick. So when they're thick like that, it's just going to take the masking fluid a little bit longer to dry. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. You know, that these will take a little longer. Okay, this is going to be adorable. I can't wait to see the finished project. Many times I'll do a practice project before I do the video. However, that is not the case with this one. I just grabbed everything and decided to bring you along on my practice run. So we can all explore it together, I guess, right? Okay, and I want to get some over by the edge here. Never shy away from the edges, because when on the finished project, it is always very noticeable, you know, if you do. So never shy away. All right. So I think that looks pretty, oh, you know what, let me put just a couple more dots right in here. Okay, all right, so this is great. This is just how I want it to look, and with this paintbrush, you can see I wiped the masking fluid right off, and that's because I used the dish detergent prior to. So we're going to let this dry for a bit, and then once this is dry, we'll continue on with the layering of the different colors and just have a lot of fun with it. So we'll be back in a bit. Okay, so I've let the masking fluid dry really well, and I went ahead and I did tape this down, and I just used some washi tape that I had, and yes, this does have some cute little dogs on it. I have created some really cute greeting cards in the past with dogs on them, and I'm a huge proponent of the Humane Society. That's where I got my little girl, and so I'm just a huge dog fan. So there's my washi tape story. Okay, so moving on with this, I am now going, now that this is all dry, I am going to go over this with basically 3 colors, and I'm going to be using cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, and it's a pinkish color called carmine. And so I'm going to get my brush very wet, and I'm going to start with the orange, and with a lot of water on my brush and a lot of paint. I'm just going to start, you know, painting it on here, and we don't have to worry about anything because we do have the, you know, the masking fluid on here. So I'm just kind of grabbing a lot of water and kind of a lot of paint also. So for the sunburst portion of this, I do want a lot of that to, you know, kind of have a little bit of both the, well, a little bit of all three is what I'm trying to say here. Not paying attention to what I'm saying. So this is the carmine. Look at the beautiful bright color that is. It's just absolutely gorgeous. And I'm putting this around the edges. I think I will work it in on some of the outside part of the Sunburst or Starburst. I guess Sunburst is a good way to say that. And we do want to make sure that we have plenty of water on our brush as we're doing this, okay? Just to get all of these colors kind of blending together very nicely. It just creates such a beautiful flow. Look at that, how it's all blending in. Absolutely gorgeous. And so let me grab just a little bit more of this, and we're going to work it in over here. And this is half the fun, just watching it all blend together. Okay, so now I'm going to be coming around to the face of the Sunburst, and I'm going to kind of try and get most of that in the orangish color. All right, so we have that. And as this is drying, it will lighten. We all know that watercolors do lighten as they dry. So where we want a good amount of color, or where we want it to be like a nice bright color, just make sure that you put a good amount of paint in that area, because it is going to blend, and it's going to blend and it's going to get lighter. So you can see in some of these areas I'm kind of adding a little bit more, because I do want it to be a little bit brighter as it dries, but I don't want to interfere with the blending of the colors either. Okay, look at how gorgeous that is. It's so bright and absolutely beautiful. And I see this area there. I wanted to put just a little water there so that it would blend. I didn't want any sharp lines. Okay, so this is all looking pretty good. Okay, all right, so we're going to let this just kind of do its thing, and we're going to have to let it dry. See, this is kind of a process. We do some, we let it dry, we do some, we let it dry. And it's a layering effect that, you know, once it's completed, it'll be absolutely gorgeous. So what I want to do here is just kind of lift a little bit of the color that's pooling along the edges. Now with the next layer, it will cover a lot of this up. You'll see what I am talking about when we get to that. So I'm going to just give this a few minutes to dry. I just want to wipe some of this up. Okay, all right. Yeah, so we'll give this just a couple minutes to dry, and then we'll be ready to move on to the next step. In this area, I just kind of want that to blend nicely. Actually, let's add just a little bit more of the orange. No, let's add a little bit more of the carmine, this bright, into that area, because you know, these little things on the Sunburst, they're going to be showing, obviously. So, all right, and then now that I'm kind of fine-tuning and really looking at this, I do see areas that I want to be just a little brighter and bolder with their color. There. Okay, so I think we are now in a good place. I'm just kind of going over everything, because once this dries and we start to lift away the masking tape or masking fluid, there's no going back. So I do want to kind of make sure that everything looks great now, so that as it dries, it'll look very nice. Okay, so yep, this is looking good. We're going to give this just a few minutes to dry, and then we'll get the next layer put on. And then once this is dry, we'll be removing the masking fluid with an eraser, and then we have one more step after that. So we'll just give this a minute. Okay, so we've given this enough time, and the paints have dried pretty nicely. So in thinking about this while I was on pause, I am actually going to be adding one more layer of paint before we start removing the stuff. Gosh, I lost my train of thought there. I apologize. All right, the masking fluid. Okay, so for the next step, what I want to do is go ahead, because this is a celestial project, we do want the stars and the sun and everything to be nice and bright, and we want the backdrop of all of this to be a little bit darker. You know, kind of a pretty nighttime blue, make it dark and mysterious. So to get that effect, I'm going to use my indigo, and I do have a good amount of water on my brush along with a good amount of paint. And so, and this tape is coming up a little bit, but that's okay. So pretty much all I'm going to do is just go over this, and this is why I didn't want to, why I decided not to take the masking fluid off just yet, because I do want all these little dots to stay bright white. And so as I go down through, and you can see it's so easy to paint right over the stars that we filled in with the masking fluid. And I'm just going to continue to go around, and I'm still using my number 14 round brush. You may want to grab something a little smaller. I don't know if that's really necessary. It really would just take up more time, I think, but just use whatever you're comfortable with. And then, so once I get this on here, then we'll want to let this dry again. And then once it's dry is when we definitely will be removing the, oh my gosh, I keep losing my train of thought with that, masking fluid. Not sure why I can't remember that today. It sits on my shelf and I look at it all the time, and I use it quite often. So with this, you can see how I'm going around all of the little points of not only the stars, but also the sun itself, because we do want the bright colors, you know, the cadmium yellow, the cadmium orange, and the carmine to all show through. You know, we don't want those to be covered up at all. So we'll be removing the masking fluid, and then we'll also be painting in just a little, you know, the eyes and the little smile for the celestial. So you can see where this is kind of drying a little bit and it's leaving edges, and that's fine. We want a very unsettled, not unsettled, but a very kind of like an unsettled look. We don't want to be necessarily totally smooth on the background portion, and you can see that, you know, in areas some of the yellow is showing through. I'm not doing it to the point where it's totally 100% covered up. And we'll just keep going around. I'm getting a little bit of a sheen from my light. Have a couple of very bright lights on this piece of work, and they do have a tendency to make a sheen when the paint is wet, and it's kind of difficult to see around. Okay, so this is just a real quick loose painting, you know, going around all of this. And I do keep wetting my brush and grabbing a little bit more paint. And then of course, as this indigo dries, it will have a tendency to lighten up a little bit as well. But it's going to be a really cool look once we're done. And then all of these little dots, they'll be white. So there's really a lot going on in this design. And you could do this, I think I've mentioned, with just about anything. I just chose a celestial theme as something a little bit different. I do a lot of the coastal themes because I do live on the Gulf Coast of Florida. I've mentioned that in previous videos, so if you haven't seen one of those, the secret's out of the bag as to where I live. All right, so this pretty much, I just want to check and make sure that I have gotten everything, and I have. So you can see how some of the you know, the different colors are coming through the indigo, and that's going to be a really nice look once it's all dry and complete. And so now at this point, we're going to just let this dry for a few minutes and before we continue on. And the next step definitely will be removing the, oh my gosh, here we go again. Sorry, I'm focusing on getting some of this paint off. I also want to have a nice white edge. I don't know, I think some of the paint may have gotten under this tape, but that's okay. But so anyway, we'll just let that go. And we'll give this just a couple of minutes, remove the masking fluid, and put a couple little details on the face, and then it'll be done. So we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, so this is dried, and that was a very time-consuming process. You know, the painting part of it is relatively quick, but the drying time is what takes so long. So I'm actually removing the tape around the edges first before I get started on removing the masking fluid. I had a little piece of tape there. Okay, great. So now let me just grab my eraser pencil. Where is it? I did have it out earlier. Okay, very good. So let's start erasing this and see what we've come up with. And this does take a few minutes, you know, to get all of this off, but once it's off, it just is so cool. Oh my gosh. It's kind of a messy process too. I'm going to grab a different eraser and see if it might work a little bit better. Yeah, this does work a little bit better. And so basically I am just going around the edges, or you know, around where the masking fluid was. I don't really want to be erasing over the entire picture because it could uplift some of the paint or make it, you know, a little bit different. Kind of rub it out a little bit. All right. This is looking really cool. Yeah, this eraser is working much better. See how cool this is looking, where all of the masking fluid was, and now it's just white underneath there. Just brings it all to life. And see how I went right to the very edge, and so now some of it is like going off the edge, and that was the effect that I wanted to get from that. It's always important, as I mentioned, to go right to the edge with some of the design to just keep that, you know, endless flow of the design kind of going. And then I was pleasantly surprised that some of the paint didn't get under the tape that I had down. I thought for sure it was going to. Okay. Yeah, this is just really, really cool. So definitely give this a try. I will say, you know, the total time with this, with the dry time and everything, it's been probably about 2 hours with letting the different layers of paint dry, letting the masking fluid dry. So, you know, it is kind of a time-consuming process from that perspective, but you know, if you do a layer and then just set it aside and go and do something else and come back to it, it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely worth the effort that you put into it. Look at how cool that is. And then, as I mentioned, the top color was the indigo, and you know, you could, once again, as I say with everything, switch it up if you wanted to, just to see what some other colors may do, you know, the effect that you might get from other colors, and just have fun with it. This is something, this design is a little bit different than what I usually have on, you know, in my videos, but I kind of wanted to do it just to give you an idea of what you can do. And we're almost done with this, and then once I get done with this, I'm going to go back and just put a little face onto my little celestial sun. Let's get that off of there. These couple of spots over here, those are just some more of the masking fluid. And let me get that last dot there. Okay, let's get that off of there. So, here's one. You gotta kind of look around if you've put a lot of dots on here. Kind of gotta look around just to make sure that you got them all. All right. As you can see, I keep finding more. Okay, look at how cute that is. Oh my gosh, I even surprised myself with this one. Okay, so now what I want to do is grab, I guess I just am going to grab one of my black micron markers, and then I'm going to come in and do the eyes. And we want to put some cute eyelashes on here. And then we'll put a little nose. Okay, actually I did have that nose going up further, but okay, so that is complete. And I think it turned out absolutely adorable. It's something, oops, there we go, found a dot. And I would suggest giving this a try. Like I said, it does take a little bit of time, you know, with the drying time in between. And you can see I'm still finding little little pieces of the masking fluid that I need to get off of there. But look at the results of this. It is truly adorable. And you can